Hi, everybody. This is Tanya Friedman calling in from Kinetics. And usually I would say it is Friday, so it's Friday Facebook Live with Tanya and the panel of immigration experts. But today is Thursday, and we are coming in to do a quick session today. We have one of the panelists. Oh, there we are. Carl just joined us. Hi, Carl.
Hello.
So just to welcome the panel, Carl Schusterman, Chris Masello, Jacob Sapachnik, and a shout out before we get started to the Lafora team for giving us this opportunity. Today we are going to be having a very quick session. We're going to be talking about the visa bulletin and more importantly also the legislation that is being proposed in Congress. So I'm going to start off by asking one of our panel just to talk about some of the good news that we've had. So we want to focus on the good, some of the good news that we've had in terms of the visa bulletin. And then we're going to be talking about the HR 244, the Fairness for High-Skilled Immigration Act of 2019. I know everybody is really worried about this. The last retrogression is burned in everybody's brain, and we are inundated with calls and emails from many nurses who are very concerned about this act. The thing to point out, though, before we even start talking about this act, is that it is only being proposed, so it is not in place yet. This is merely a proposal. In fact, this legislation has been around, I think, is it since 2011? I think it's...
Yeah.
So it's been proposed many times over the years and was reintroduced in February 7th, 2019. So to start off, let's talk a little bit about the visa bulletin and the progress that we've seen and what our experts think the implications and the prognosis is for the visa bulletin. Who would like to start off and give us just a quick sum up of your thoughts in that regard on the visa bulletin right now? Chris.
Yeah, no, so, I mean, the visa bulletin was terrific news for Filipinos in particular. The visa bulletin EB3 date moved another 4 months. It is all the way up to, let's see, March 1st, 2018. So that's only about a year. And it has been moving rapidly, really, this entire fiscal year. A fiscal year runs, of course, from October 1st to October 1st. So we are a little more than right about halfway through the fiscal year, and it's been a great fiscal year. And all indications are, and maybe this is the most exciting part, all indications are from the Department of State that it will continue to move forward over the next few months. So we will continue to see progress. The one caution that I always like to give everybody about the visa bulletin is the July, August, and September visa bulletins every year are a little bizarre. And so if you see the visa bulletin accelerate forward, which would be a positive thing, or pull back and retrogress in that July, August, September timeframe, do not get too excited if it progresses, and do not get too disappointed if it rapidly slows down and even becomes unavailable for a period of time. Those 3 months are the last 3 months of the of the fiscal year. And so what the U.S. Department of State, along with consultation from USCIS, what they're trying to do is make sure that every single visa that can be used, but not one more, is used during the fiscal year, which is why we get these enormous variances during that time period. So I think the takeaway then, Tanya, is, number one, another great visa bulletin for Philippine EB3. Number two, likely to be continued into April and May and June progress. I don't know if we'll still continue to see the 2, 3, 4 months that we've seen, but the expectation is that we will continue to see very favorable visa bulletins. But then come July through September, don't panic if things get unusual. It will all get reset come October.
Okay. And I'm smiling as you're saying that, because Carl will remember we did a Facebook Live at that time last year, and everybody was having a panic attack. And Carl was like very calmly saying, Please don't worry, everybody. It's going to be okay. You're going to see that that the progression will move forward. And of course, Carl, you were right.
Okay. The beautiful thing about this is that we don't have surprises. Over the last 30 years, it's always the same.
Yeah.
Up and down.
The track record is there.
Yeah.
So right now, if we filed a new petition for a Filipino-born nurse today, how long do you estimate it would take for the nurse to be able to arrive here?
So, Tanya, we usually suggest now that if a Philippine I-140 were filed here in March or April, we would expect that nurse to be in the United States no later than next summer.
Okay.
Perhaps even a little bit sooner.
Okay. So that's the good news, everybody. So we want to start off on a positive, and everybody needs to keep that in mind. The visa bulletin is progressing at a positive rate. And that's the one thing we know, for sure right now. What we don't know for sure is about HR 1044. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. I actually, I'm going to read off just a quick sum up about this act. It was actually an article from the Forbes magazine. And just to go back and welcome everyone. I see we have a lot of people watching us today. So there's obviously a lot of interest in this 1044. We've got Juna Lupus, hi, watching from Canada, Lara Badia, Dong Avaya, Thing Arcias, Shannon Doe, Gil Dureza, D. Jenin. So lots and lots of people watching this live broadcast. And again, thank you so much to the experts for sharing their time. I know how busy you are. And really the reason why we wanted to do this Facebook Live now is for people to understand what HR 1044 actually is, and where it is in the process, and what the implications might be, because there's obviously a lot of concern, a lot of fear, a lot of worry about that, and we want to make sure that people have the facts. So what is HR 1044, Fairness for High-Skilled Immigrations Act of 2019? So this is an excerpt from the Forbes magazine. The US is taking a second shot at removing the per-country limit on green cards through Bill HR 1044, formerly HR 392, also known as the Fairness for High-Skilled Immigration Act, which was introduced to both the US House of Representatives and the US Senate on February 7th, 2019. So again, everybody, before we even get into the details, please remember this has not even passed Congress yet. It's only been reintroduced. This bill aims to have green cards issued by category and date of filing, regardless of the country of birth of the applicant. With bipartisan support and the backing of the major tech firms, including Google, Microsoft, and IBM, it seems the bill may be the real deal. However, despite HR 1044's intended purpose of alleviating current backlogs with more efficient processing of employment-based applicants born in countries like India and China and family-based applicants born in Mexico, the problem is that it will not benefit immigrants from all other countries. So obviously, Philippines would be one of those, and therefore may not be a net benefit for America. Instead of issuing more green cards, HR 1044 is pitting immigrants from some countries against those from others on a divide and conquer basis. Advocates for the bill argue that scrapping the per-country limit will help reduce the backlog, help maintain America's competitive and innovative reputation, and boost opportunity for all. Opponents argue that if HR 1044 were passed, it would be discriminatory because less populated countries would no longer have access to a guaranteed green card pool. What is more, they argue scrapping the per-country limit would favor one country over others. High-skilled tech employers would benefit, but the bill would create a shortage of workers in other industries such as healthcare. So that's obviously where the concern comes in from many Filipino nurses. So I think if one of the panel would like to share your thoughts in terms of this bill and what we can learn about it and what you think the implications would be.
Yeah, I'd be happy to chime in. I think no country's been more adversely affected by the per country quotas than the Philippines. My wife, when she became a citizen in the 1970s, applied for all of her 8 brothers and sisters from the Philippines, but because each country can only get 7% of each family category, each employment category, and there were so many Filipinos that were coming to the United States and becoming U.S. citizens and applying for their brothers and sisters that the waiting time is now over 24 years, which is ridiculous. I mean, in other words, if she applied for a sister and the sister had a baby the next year, the sister's baby would be 23 by the time they got to the front of the line and probably couldn't immigrate with the family. So I'm totally against per country quotas. I think we should have the best immigrants coming to the U.S. and it really doesn't matter which particular country they're from. But here's the problem with it. Even though getting rid of country quotas by itself seems like a great idea, the backlog has built up so much. Let's just use an example. In the EB2 category, which is professionals with higher degrees, like a doctor, or it could be a computer programmer. India now has a backlog of 400,000 to 500,000 people waiting in line. And there's only 140,000 immigrants who can come through all the employment categories, 40,000 in the EB2 category each year. So if you were just suddenly now going to take off the per country quota, that would mean that Indians would pretty much get all the EB2 for the next 10 years. Nobody else in the world would they be able to come. So doing it that way just doesn't make any sense. You know, even though I don't like per country quotas, you just can't have one country dominating everything for the next 10 years. So I think this bill has never gone anywhere because in the past, different associations have opposed it for that reason. So now this year's bill, they modified it slightly. And I think people in Congress need to get informed a little more about the effects that it will have. It's great to get rid of discrimination, but if you're going to bring in another problem, that it's going to discriminate against everybody. So one of the things they did is they have a 3-year transition period where people not from India and China will get 15% of the numbers, okay? And then they also say that if you're currently in line, you have an approved visa petition, they guarantee that you won't have to wait longer than you would have if they didn't pass the bill. And both of those things are fine, but they're not enough. Because if they just do that, anybody who gets petitioned or has a petition approved after the effective date of the bill, which if it passed would probably be around October 1st of this year, would have to wait in line over 7 years minimum to get a green card. So in my view, the solution is we're not giving enough of the green cards to people in the employment categories. I mean, it's fine if my wife's brother gets a green card, but she may have another brother that, one brother's a great brother, the other brother not so great. We know we need nurses. We know we need doctors. We know we need people that are going to contribute to the American economy. So shouldn't we have more green cards based on the employment categories? Back in 1990, the first George Bush signed a law that was passed bipartisan through Congress to raise the number of people that immigrated through employment from a very low of 52,000 a year to 140,000 a year. And I think we should be looking at that again. Let's raise it to 300,000 a year. They can easily raise the numbers. and they can take things like the visa lottery, which makes no sense at all. It's not awarding people by merit. It's just like going to Las Vegas to do your immigration case. Take those 50,000 and add them to the employment. So I think that has to be incorporated into the bill to make sure we, the nurse shortage is already over 200,000. The physician shortage is tens of thousands and growing. So if we're going to have proper health care, for example, for Americans, we need to modify the immigration laws so they make sense.
And I think, what Carl said is absolutely correct, because the reason why this bill is even being introduced over and over the years is because of the tech industry lobby. They want engineers and skilled workers that are able to advance their technologies, but they can't because those people are leaving the country. A lot of Indian and Chinese engineers are literally leaving the US, and their companies are trying to help them. But that's not a solution, like Carl said, because by creating a limitation on countries and not increasing the visa numbers, it's still not going to help. There's no guarantee that people that are waiting in line right now, like Carl said, are still going to be staying in the same position. It's an idea that they're saying, but it's not a guarantee. So it's pretty disappointing, actually.
Yeah, and it's a proposed law, as Carl and Jacob mentioned. So I think that's important to recognize. We know there's a lot of anxiety, and people are very, very concerned, and they should be. But the good news is at this point, it's just proposed. I think the other piece of good news is this isn't legislation that's targeted against the Philippines. It's really trying to correct a wrong. As Carl says, really the solution is to just add more visas to the employment-based category. So, one question I get on Facebook and blogs and even on emails and things like that is, what can I do to help as the Philippine nurse? And so there is an effort underway in Washington, D.C. I've been there a few times this year to just fix the bill in a way so that Philippine nurses are not harmed by this. And so what can you do? What you can do is you can make sure, number one, your recruiter, your staffing company, your hospital, whoever you're working with, well, number one, that they're aware of this, that if this bill were to pass this year, that it would have a devastating negative impact on Philippine nurses. That's number one. And then number two, that what Congress reacts to are letters and emails from American hospitals to senators, and I'm happy to help coordinate some of that. I've got template letters. I know exactly which are the important senators and congressmen to get in touch with. And so what you can do if you're listening to this Facebook Live is contact your recruiter, contact your facility, and make sure they're aware of this. And if they want to help, they need to send these letters. That's really going to be the way we can get this fixed.
So, I think that's all really interesting insights from the three of you. And I think the good news, as you said, is this is still, it's not in law. So don't everybody just, let that anxiety get too much right now. I think it's, I always say it's like when you've had a sunburn, you're more sensitive to the sun. So, the last retrogression is still fresh in a lot of people's minds. And obviously that creates a whole nother level of anxiety because that retrogression lasted for a long time. So people are understandably very concerned about it. And that's why we're doing this Facebook Live session, because we want to make sure that everybody understands the situation and can also see what you can do about it. So I think the very positive information that we gained from Chris, and I encourage all of you who are watching to please share this with your colleagues, with your employers, with your recruiters. Please make sure to share this because we need to get the word out to all of the relevant hospitals, nursing homes, correctional rehab facilities to get involved and make sure that we approach the right senators and that we get the word out. In fact, the American Nurse Association actually came out in opposition of this amendment. They represent obviously 5,000 member hospitals, health systems, and healthcare organizations, which represents 43,000 healthcare leaders. And as we know, the statistics are from the American Nurse Association that there are going to be a shortage of 1 million new registered nurse positions by 2022, which, as we know, is around the corner. So, the statistics are in everybody who's watching this favor for, to get the word out to the various senators and through the hospitals and facilities that you're working with, that we need to make sure that they are educated in terms of how this would impact Filipino nurses and what we need to do in that regard. I think that pretty much covers what we wanted to accomplish today. Just for everybody to know, from Kinetic's perspective, we are already working in this regard very vigorously to speak to all the hospitals and nursing homes and facilities that we work with. And obviously we encourage everybody else in this industry to do the same. Any last thoughts, Carl, Chris, Jacob?
Yeah, just like I said, Chris said, I wouldn't panic right now. I would just make people understand that it's proposed. I mean, I highly, I don't think it's going to pass, but it's good to be aware that we need change. We need more visas, and we need to definitely do something different. And hopefully, but like Chris said, contacting our representatives and putting some pressure, educating the people, just like we do here, is going to be the best thing we can do.
Okay.
I agree. I wanted to point out one other thing. I did say there is an exception in this bill for people who have their visa petitions approved, that the bill won't adversely affect them. So if anybody has an offer, what they may want to do is have the hospital file the petition for them using premium processing, and then they know in a matter of weeks it'll be approved. And if the bill passes or it doesn't pass, they won't be adversely affected.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And just to point out that, because we're getting a lot of calls and emails and texts and about that as well, please remember that when a case goes through the process, obviously it has to go through prevailing wage and the posting stages before you can file that I-140. So, that is something, those timelines are not in the lawyer's hands, they're not in the recruiter's hands, they're not in the facility's hands. That is something that needs to go through its process. And unfortunately, we can't change those timelines. But obviously any reputable, lawyer and recruiter and facility are going to be watching those timelines very quickly, because everybody is just as invested in you in getting those cases filed as quickly as possible. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for your time. I know how busy you are, and we will continue having our monthly Facebook Live sessions going forward. I think we have a date already scheduled in April where we will still be taking your questions, but we wanted to give the opportunity of doing this additional Facebook Live, and we really appreciate the Lafora team's support. So thank you to Louise and Jean and Paul and all the admin for giving this opportunity, because we want to make sure that we give accurate information and that we don't feed on rumors. And I think today's session has definitely helped in that regard. Thank you, everybody. See you all in April.
All right.
And keep the questions coming. Thank you. Bye-bye.